Shall we wait another minute or shall we start? Shall we start? Yes? Okay, hello to everybody. My name is Luca. I'm one of the member of SG, not the older member, one of the new member, but you know, it's and I'm going to facilitate the event for today. And basically this event will be divided in three parts. The first part is just to give us some few bits of a presentation for this event. The second part, I'm going to invite you, tell me your name, which is your connection with Haringe Solidarity Group, what do you do, very briefly. The third part is I'm going to leave the words to Tony. Tony is going to cover the time from the 1990 to the 2005, and then Morris is going to cover the time from the 2005 to 2020. As you know, 30 years. Basically, the first day was exactly on the 11th. Today, 11th of May. And the reason we want to organize this event is, first of all, is not an internal meeting. Actually, I'm very glad to see a lot of people I know and coming today here. If all the people I don't know, actually, it's also an opportunity to meet, to know. And basically we want to celebrate the 30 years in some extent all the local radical protests, campaigns and movements we did in Haringe, and also to create this bridge between the past and the future. Is not just a celebrative event, but also an opportunity to connect with the current struggle in our borough, in London, and also in another United Kingdom. And now I'm going to leave. I'm going to ask your name. What do you do? Starting from the reins, please, very quickly.
Sorry, I've not really been listening to a lot of this. I'm trying to watch the football and getting various messages in at the same time. So,
Sorry.
yeah, to start with me was probably the wrong idea. Anyway, I'll go back to the football and leave you to it.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, I'll go ahead with the Anja.
Hi everyone, I'm Anya. I'm one of the current trustees of Living Under One Sun.
Thank you, Anya. And Jane?
Hi, I'm Jane. I used to be involved in HSG.
Thank you, Jane. Sue? We don't hear you, Sue. We don't hear you. Okay, I'm going through. And David King, please.
Sorry, I just joined. What's the question?
Just what do you do? Which is your connection with Haringe Solidarity Group? Where you live?
I'm on the mailing list and have been involved in some of, not in the core group activities, but so like many of the campaigns that sort of like came out of Haringey Solidarity Group.
Thank you.
Start the ID campaign, things like that.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a Margaret. You need to unmute, Margaret. We don't hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I was an old member in 1991. I joined the Solidarity Group and used to do lots of things in the 90s with my family. We used to be on all the campaigns and used to do a lot of stuff around borough, whatever came up. Then I went overseas and worked with voluntary service overseas, 12 years. And when I came back, I never quite got back into doing things in the borough again as I used to, but I go to everything around the borough at the moment. I go to meetings, and I came tonight just to catch up a bit on what was going on.
Perfect. Thank you for your memory. And then now we have John. You have to unmute, John. We don't hear you.
Crying, there you go. Hopefully you can hear me now. In Stamford Hill, I do the Radical History of Hackney website. I was formerly involved with Hackney Independent, and I think it's fair to say that HSG was one of the inspirations of that, and we can maybe talk about the differences between the two. But yeah, I lived in Haringey in the late 80s and thought that all this stuff was normal. I thought, you know, that there were all these community activists running around doing exciting things was what everybody had, and it turned out later that they didn't.
Okay, thank you. And then Joyce.
Okay, I wasn't involved in the 90s, but from about the last 20 years, I've been involved in various community groups, Sustainable Haringey, Friends of Parks, residents associations, and so on. So a lot of activities, you know, in recent years.
Thank you. Ayala.
Yeah, former member. I was in HSG from around, I guess, 2010. But I've moved to Exeter, so I'm no longer around.
Okay, thank you for coming. And Ellen?
Hello. Sorry, hello. I was involved in HSG in the 90s and intermittently since then. I'm actually on my way home from, I've had a day at the public inquiry into undercover policing and I haven't got home yet, so I'm staying on mute, I'm staying without camera for a while until I'm home and whatever, just listening in anyway. Thanks.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you. Hello. And then we have Joanna.
Hi everyone. So I've learnt about the Solidarity Group for various community engagement work that I do, and a local campaign through the Parks Forum. And I think I'm not sure if you guys were involved in the Battle of Wood Green in the 80s. I think I've recently learned about that, the Anti-Fascism March.
70s.
In the 70s, sorry. Thank you, Dave. Yeah.
But it was good. It was a good battle. Yeah.
Was that you guys? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then now we have Martin. Martin, we want to see your face.
Where's Martin?
Martin, do you hear us? Okay, Martin. Okay, I'm going to skip you now. Alda.
Hi guys, I joined the meetings probably about 6 months ago. I've known the Haringey Solidarity Group for many years, living in the borough, and I'm an artist and an activist, been particularly active around the issue of cultural diversity and heritage, and so I'm pleased to join you tonight for the celebration.
Thank you, Alda. And then we have Rebecca, which I know very well. Rebecca?
Yes.
Just quickly tell us what do you do, which is your connection with Haringey Solidarity Group?
Yes, my name is Rebecca. My connection with Haringey group is back years, I can't remember. I got involved with a few activities, but now I'm not an active member, but I'm in the email list. So I'm here to celebrate with you, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, we're happy for that. Thank you. And then Don, please.
Yeah, I'm Don. I was involved with HSG in, well, late noughties, I guess, 2008, 9, 10 for a few years. around that time. But now I live in rainy Cornwall, and well, I've not been massively active, but I've got involved in Green and Black Cross on the Legal Observers side and the Green Anti-Capitalist Front and that sort of thing. A little bit with XR. And of course, we've got the G7 coming up, so we can expect some fun and games there.
Thank you, Don. And then Zaire.
Hi, everybody. I'm Zaire, involved with the HSG since 2008, and I live in the borough since end of '94. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Before I'm going to leave the part to Tony, I want to say at the end of the two speech, obviously we want to hear your contributions, your opinions, especially for something happening now in our borough. And if you want to contribute with any form of contribution, you can even leave in the chat. I'm going to constantly check the chat with questions, with thoughts, with opinions, and I hope we're going to have a good discussion at the end of the two speech. Okay, and now I'm going to leave Tony the stage for this event.
Hi all. Cheers, Luca. I was only going to talk for about 10 minutes with the idea of saying a few of the things that Haringey Solidarity Group did in the first 15 years of its life and why it came about. I'll mention a few things, but ideally the idea was to try and get chat going rather than me doing a boring history lesson. And some of this is dates, so I'm going to be looking down a little bit because I can't remember them all in my head. So bear with me. So yeah, in Haringey we had quite an effective anti-poll tax campaign back in the very early 90s. And at one point there was 4 anti-poll tax groups, which was Tottenham, Wood Green, Green Lanes and Hornsey. And we came together as Haringey Against the Poll Tax and had borough-wide meetings as well. And then when the poll tax was beaten, there was still a lot of poll tax work to do, but people were realising that there was probably a lot of other things to campaign around as well. And there was a suggestion that went out from some people in Haringey that instead of the poll tax groups sort of falling apart and disintegrating and people leaving, we should form them into solidarity groups, campaigning groups, solidarity networks, and that went out to the 4 groups in Haringey. But I know people in Haringey also put that idea out to loads of the anti-poll tax groups around the country as well. And obviously we did it in Haringey. I think I know people in Edinburgh did it. I think there might have been 1 or 2 other groups, but unfortunately most of the anti-poll tax groups around the country decided to call it a day. And if they'd all carried on and become campaigning solidarity type groups, maybe we'd be in a different place than we are now. John's just said Hackney carried on as well. Yeah, I'd say there was some others as well. But yeah, so anyway, around 1991, well, in April 1991, we had the very first get-together of everyone in Haringey to try and form some sort of solidarity group, solidarity network. And then we had the second meeting on the 11th of May. So this is actually the 30-year anniversary of our second meeting, not the first meeting, it seems. But yeah, 25 people turned up. It was at a place called Tottenham Community Project, that those of us that are old enough remember as a really inspirational space, where they had computers in there, which at that time was quite a novelty, and they were helping people like printing up stuff. They had a hall for hire, and it was a really good community space. Unfortunately, it is now housing, like a lot of things in Haringey. But yeah, so we had that meeting, and we decided in April '91 to form Haringey's Solidarity Group. And I sent round on the list the first aims and principles of the Solidarity Group, which was set up then. And then in January '92, the Tottenham Anti-Poll Tax Group decided to form itself into Tottenham Solidarity Network. And although we was doing a lot of poll tax stuff, because there was people still being sent to jail and lots of people were getting court summonses, we wanted to do a lot of other stuff as well. And then somewhere later in '92, I know Wood Green, Green Lanes and Hornsey also turned their poll tax groups into solidarity type groups. For a while, Haringey Solidarity Group and the 3 individual groups continued. And then it looks like, and I can't remember this, even though I was there at the beginning, I can't remember it, but it looks like from the minutes, Haringey Solidarity Group sort of faded away a little bit, and the 3 local groups continued. But then around, well, I know, in September '94, because the groups were fairly small and we were doing stuff together, we decided to all come together again as Haringey Solidarity Group. So the 3 local groups finished and we just had the borough-wide group. And that's continuing to in its present format until today. One of the things that really struck me looking at the original minutes for the first year was just how much it's exactly the same issues we're campaigning around, and it's the same things that are always coming up. The initial things we had in '91 was transport, anti-racism, environment, housing, childcare provision, issues around supporting people of pensionable age, and unwage issues. And you know, they're exactly the same things we've got now, and it seems such a shame that we keep fighting the same issues. And I know we have to, but yeah, maybe that's something we talk about later. And it's amazing 30 years ago how we were working in the same way with subgroups. We wanted a centre and people still want centres, and the idea was to produce a newsletter. And I remember then we had a really big discussion for a couple of meetings about whether Haringey Solidarity Group should be an anarchist group or a more non-aligned, non-hierarchical group. And the general feeling was it should be a much more broad-based group. So it just became, well, not just, it became a group that would be non-aligned with any political groups, but also be non-hierarchical. And looking back through those minutes, one of the things that, there was a few things that seemed quite inspirational and inspiring. A number of the women in the group set up a women's group within HSG, and there was it seems weird to think this now, but there was a pro-life shop in Turnpike Lane, and there were loads of pickets against that place. And I think Helen might have been involved and know more about it, but eventually it closed down at some point. I'm never really sure. I'm not sure whether that was because of the stuff the women's group were doing or something else. But yeah, so there was that. There was a big campaigns around '94 to save all the post offices, the main post offices, because they were closing them. And we succeeded, and you now look and Tottenham main post office is gone, the one on Green Lanes is gone, and the one in Wood Green's gone. And you just think we managed to stop it back then, and obviously we didn't manage to stop it sort of in the last few years, which is a shame. One of the other common themes and something that came up and HSG were supportive of and worked with people was just people being killed by the police. You know, HSG wasn't around in the 80s when Cynthia Jarrett was killed, but I know a lot of us were around the Unwaged Centre in that time and supporting people and supporting what was the Broadwater Farm Defence Campaign. But, you know, there was Joy Gardner, there was Roger Sylvester, and more recently there's Mark Duggan, and HSG always tried to support those campaigns, but it's just a continual thing that seems to happen every now and then in our borough. So anyway, on to a more positive thing. HSG did set up a newsletter, and the first one was out in the winter of 1992, and it was called Tottenham Community Action. And then 4 or 5 issues later, we turned it into Haringey Community Action. And the first issue of the newsletter, we had articles around stuff we were doing around Child Support Act, the poll tax, traffic in our borough, which is a continual thing again. Water privatisation was something that was on the cards at that time. An issue around prostitution, and something that keeps coming up time and time again in the newsletters. We were having a go at Haringey Council. By the end of Haringey Community Action, we were producing 12,000 issues that we would distribute in both door to door and on the streets, which probably was the height of the newsletter. And I can't remember why, but towards the end, we stopped Haringey Community Action for 2 or 3 years. It was about 1998. We had a bit of a period where we weren't doing a newsletter, and then in 2002 we started up Totally Independent, which is the present newsletter we've got going. And we were involved in setting up and helping a number of national campaigns. There was Groundswell, which was a campaign around workfare type stuff for benefits and claimants. And there was national meetings with probably about 10, 15 groups around the country, and HSG was quite instrumental in help setting all that up. There was also the Child Support Act stuff that went national and HSG was involved in, and there was the ID card stuff as well, which we tried. It was quite a, for those of us that were there, it was quite a fun meeting, the first anti-poll tax meeting we had. And maybe others that were there can reminisce about it. But yeah, so there was national stuff that we helped with. Over the years, HSG's been really into putting up posters and trying to have a quick count. There is thousands of posters we must have put up around the borough. And there is dozens and dozens of street stalls we've done. And there is an endless amount of leaflets which we produced and handed out around far too many issues to talk about. But one of the things, the other thing I was going to sort of finish on is, as well as doing their own stuff, I think one of the good things about HSG over the years, and obviously HSG's been 3 people in a room sometimes to 25 people in a room. It's had its highs, but it's also had its lows. But we've tried to support loads of other groups doing things, and that will be physically going out and supporting groups, putting stuff on the email list about it. But also, you know, we had the centre for a while on Green Lanes, which we were letting people use for meetings, and for years we've had a photocopier, which loads of other groups have asked us to photocopy stuff, which, although not a big thing, is quite useful for groups. So yeah, and we're still here 30 years later. So I'm going to stop there. Dave, you can carry on. But it's more what other people remember and how we can go forward and what was good that I think is important from tonight.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much. And now, Dave, is your round.
So by 2005, I think we'd kind of pretty much established a range of, you know, basic activities. So I'm just going to quickly go through these. By the way, me and Tony's kind of detail on the history I've put the links in the chat, and it's also on our website. So if you want to get into the full detail, certainly mine is extremely detailed. I'm not going to repeat all that. But basically, by 2005, we were producing tens of thousands of copies of Totally Independent to hand out free on the streets, holding regular, at least monthly meetings with an open agenda, having discussions. Our email lists for any supporters was a means of communication about coming events or whatever. We're managing and still do manage a website. We have an office, as Tony said. We support a whole range of particularly local groups, campaigns, activities, and networks, and so on. And I think most significantly, we've helped to set up groups that have gone on to become independent and do great work. And that's a very unusual thing for any kind of left-wing. I suppose we're broadly left-wing, you know, rather than setting up front organisations that we control. We try to encourage the development of groups and networks that are needed, that are autonomous. And some examples of that is the Haringey Housing Action Group came out of this group. That's still going. The Our Tottenham Network was an idea that came from HSG. Radical History Network of North East London, which John from Hackney, who's here, is part of. That again was an initiative of HSG. And Haringey Independent Cinema, which sadly doesn't seem to be active anymore, but for 10 years was having monthly film shows and talks and all kinds of stuff. So we support other networks, community networks in the borough, and national campaigns, you know, come and go, and we might link into those. We've tried very hard to create a network of radical community-based groups like ours across London and across the country. And I have to say, without a great deal of success, it's very, very hard to create a permanent, ongoing solidarity network. So I suppose our activities, in terms of like the effect they have on people's lives, you could kind of like split them arbitrarily into community struggles, working class living standards, defending living standards, supporting workplace struggles, general political radical activity, which I'll come on to, and probably policing is as well. These are kind of themes. So rather than just read out a great long list of everything we've done, you know, they fit into ongoing themes. So community struggles, certainly, probably opposing cuts to public services. The big, one of our initiatives was to get all the key borough-wide networks to agree to launch the Haringey Alliance for Public Services. So it was an idea that came from us, but we wanted it to come, you know, the first meeting to come from established borough-wide networks, the Trades Council, the Federation of Residents Association. That was successful, and for about 2 or 3 years, it was a major presence in the borough, including organising marches and mass leafleting and lobbying in the council. In fact, at one point, we occupied the Civic Centre for a number of hours and had our own Haringey Alliance for Public Services session declaring the cuts null and void. In terms of community struggles, we've supported defence of the NHS and local GP surgeries, and particularly around planning issues. I think there's obviously lots of planning issues that have come up over the years, threats to sites, the threat of demolitions and so on. And one thing that we initiated was the Our Tottenham network, which is still active today. That was for the last 8 years, trying to get all the groups in Tottenham to support each other over planning and regeneration issues. So coming to working class living standards, opposing workfare, which is people being forced off the dole to work for nothing, supporting people having the benefits that they need and they're entitled to. We oppose Bright House, which is a lending company at massive high rates of interest, so people get into permanent debt. And I think most importantly, housing. We've always supported different housing issues and campaigns. Obviously, we helped to set up and support the Housing Action Group, still going, but also Defend Council Housing. And at one time, a Private Tenants Action Group. And the three groups, I think, we had a march down Green Lanes at one point, and we were going into all the estate agents and calling them a crime scene because of high rents and threat of evictions of people in private accommodation. So coming on to workplace struggles, I think we've always supported different workplace struggles. I think mainly there's been local government strikes, the post office, various post office disputes. And at one time we helped to form a support group for a long running post office workers strike. And I think most interesting was when we supported the Visteon car factory workers on the border with Enfield. One of us was in the occupation for a whole week. It was occupied by the workers against closure. That led to a support group, and it was quite a nationally significant struggle because 3 car factories owned by Visteon were occupied around different parts of the UK. So just to move away from specific campaigning, in terms of radical political activity, if you like, rather than campaigning, I think we've always held discussions, mass leafleting, the cinema helped to spread ideas, independent cinema, the newspaper, obviously. And for a number of years, we held something called Haringey Independence Day, where we tried to have a whole event of stalls, films, talks, food at Parkview Academy. So that was quite good for getting lots of different people to work together and discuss things who wouldn't normally come under one roof. We've opposed elections, but not necessarily saying don't vote, but just saying that's not real politics. Real politics is people organising and speaking for themselves. And we also opposed the Universal Church of the Kingdom of God, a right dodgy cult, a religious cult. And we had, so, you know, in terms of challenging their ideology and their cultish behaviour. We've tried hard to set up London-wide and national networks, particularly in London. We spent 10 years trying to encourage groups like ours to form all over London with very limited success, unfortunately, which really makes a difference when you feel isolated. You know, that I think we're doing all the right things, but you know, you can only have an effect if everybody's doing it all over the country, in fact, all over the world. So, and just finally on that that we've had a lot of internal discussions, strategy days, dealing with issues within the group, sexism, personality disputes, use of our email list, and we've always grappled with the internal politics, if you like, because the way you organise is as important as the campaigns and the ends that you're seeking. You can't separate the means and the end. So we held a couple of quiz nights that were very successful. So we managed to organise some social events amongst all the campaigning stuff. So my conclusions are, considering it's been quite a small number of people, like Tony says, especially in the last 15 years, I think it's been between 3 and 15 people. It shows what you can achieve, and obviously we could achieve more if more people were actively involved, and if we were involving our wider diaspora, our network, in a better way, which is something that I've always argued from the very first meeting, is that we should really be building a network, not just a collective. and our continuity has been good, obviously. And I'm just looking at some of our achievements, and some major successes: the paper, the Alliance for Public Services, Our Tottenham, the Independent Cinema, and Haringey Housing Action Group. And I think the anti-workfare campaigning for a couple of years, we actually kind of, in the end, put a stop to the workfare program from the Job Centre. A lot of organisations and charities we were picketing and occupying pulled out of that program. So that was quite an individual campaign success. But I think we need to be more strategic, because I don't think we've benefited, or we've managed to mobilise the potential that there is in Haringey. There's always been this thing about the collective and the network, and we've always focused mainly on the collective whilst supporting a whole range of other things. But I think there's more potential if more people get involved, and not necessarily having to attend meetings. But so, and the other thing I think that that we could be more strategic about is building strong foundations in certain areas of work. So all the community work and support that we've given to community struggles, we've never built our own. We tried sort of neighbourhood rep system, HSG reps in different wards around the borough. We did try for a year or two to do this, but it didn't really take root. And so that we could be more actively engaged in local community struggles in every part of the borough, and feed back to the group and so on. Also with workplace stuff, support for workplace struggles, we've never really decided whether we should support Haringey Trades Council and try and build that as a workers, network, or create our own network. So it's been one way: we support people, and then when it finishes, what's left? What have we created that's long term? I do think that finally, the same with claimant struggles and unwaged struggles. I think if we'd have created a claimants union as an independent presence in the borough, that would have been really long-term helpful. And a social centre, we've always wanted our own social centre that people can have meetings and, meals and bookshop and archives and all that kind of stuff, which we've never managed to get off the ground. Just my last point is that a lot of people might feel, after all this work, is it worth it? And the revolution seems a long way away. If we want to have a different kind of better society, it can only really come about through revolution. But actually, things can change very fast in society. That's the lesson of history throughout the world. And there's been mass movements and struggles and efforts to make social change in a whole range of countries in the last 5 years, involving millions of people. We just have to keep plugging away until that moment arrives in this country. But unfortunately, it has to happen all over the world for it to be a really successful new society that is created, run by people ourselves.
Thank you, Dave. I think, thank you, Tony. Very inspiring thoughts, very inspiring speech. I think it's also important to note, Haringey Solidarity Group try to be active, it was active even during the pandemic, when, the pandemic was obviously, we're still in the pandemic, but even during the lockdowns, we were still active, and we try, to have some activities as much as we could. For example, we try to create this radical network among different situation and groups throughout the country, when all the mutual aid groups rose and were active in London, and not just only London. And then it was a interesting how other cities, Bristol, Edinburgh, Northampton, or we were in touch with other groups, individuals, try to, you know, to create a network to some extent. And also still nowadays, we try to support other campaigns. For example, just posted on the chat the statement, the latest statement of the Haringey Solidarity Group in support of the Kill the Bill campaign, which is a quite interesting what's happening now with this campaign, because, you know, this campaign try, you know, to tackle, you know, the government want to ban demo and also other freedom of speech and other, you know, other situations. I think is the idea of to support local groups in Haringey. For example, we support the Haringey Migrant Center, and then also the Luos with our financial aid. We try to support this initiative, asking for computers, laptop, especially was quite difficult for students during the lockdown to access for computers, and then we try to, you know, to give our contribution, even though we were sometimes there was not a large participation in meetings, but we want the meetings is not just the core of the Haringey Solidarity Group. The core is also to expand through our network and with the other activities in the borough. And then David mentioned the Haringey Independent Cinema was a clear example where we try, you know, to have some social activity in the borough of Haringey. Now, I'm very interested to know all your views, all your points, all your you know, what you think what can be done in the future in this landscape, in this framework. We try, you know, to underline and to stress how we think it's still important to have a radical activity in Haringey, but also as well, when basically we don't want to give up.
Luca, it'd be good if people start off with maybe reflections on the past before we look forward to the future.
Okay. You can even leave something in the chat if you want.
I think I'd be interested in hearing from people that were involved in HSG and what they think worked well. And maybe, I know a lot of people have moved away or, you know, get busy with work or whatever, but do they feel that they learn things through doing the HSG stuff that they've, you know, that's been useful for other things they've been involved with?
Come on, everybody, jump in.
Anyone want to reply?
I was going to say.
Yes, what could I say? Yes, the reason that my family, on the whole, left Haringey, alas, was because they didn't feel that things were working as well as they should have been working through the 90s coming up. Things didn't carry on, and that's why my family left. I learned many things because I went with voluntary service overseas after campaigning around Haringey, and left many things. And I think, well, I don't know why things didn't carry on as I thought they should have done.
Okay.
I've never really quite worked out why, because I thought people who were campaigning and who were doing things could have done it. And I've never been quite sure why it didn't happen. And that's just my views. And
Luca, I think Helen Steele wanted to speak.
I think Helen has two different. Yes, Ellen. There we go, Ellen. We see your face now. Hello.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to. I'm trying to mute my other one.
Oh, blimey. Helen,
I've got to turn the other one off, sorry.
Yeah, you need to turn off with another.
Right,
yeah,
that's it. I've sorted the other one out now. I just wanted to say something about when you were talking about industrial disputes. One of the ones that you didn't mention was the JJ strike. The fast food distribution workers at they were on a site just where the new, it was an old GLC, by the old GLC site that is now tower blocks at Tottenham Hale. And there was a big strike by the fast food workers there, and they were pickets every morning really early. The Kurdish workers that were fighting for recognition, union recognition, and their bosses sacked them. And we used to go down and support them on the picket line, and made some really good friendships with some of the people there. They had like a lot of social events that they invited some of us to. It was really good. It was really inspiring. Sadly, I don't think the ending was that great actually in the end, but it was, the struggle was inspiring, even if the end wasn't that satisfactory. Anyway, that was all I wanted to say at the moment.
Thank you, Ellen. Anyone else want to bring some memories or some, other points about the past of SCG?
I don't know how you want to take people, Luca. Do you want us to put our hands up? Do you want us to signal in the reactions bit? I'm not sure what you want, but
just hand up.
Yeah,
just hand up. You can use also the ending up is easy because we are is a small number of people. Yeah, you can end up. Raise your hand.
I got my hand up.
Okay, Joanna.
Hi everyone. So I've learned about the Battle of Wood Green, and it was quite interesting. I've learned about that through a school campaign. So for me, I just thought I'd kind of share it for those amongst you who don't know about the Wood Green, the Battle of Wood Green. Sorry, Dave can fill a scene on that, but I thought it was really interesting how we reminisce in the past, but yet I don't know much about what the organisation has been doing in the past, apart from what you've just given us update and apart from what is on the website. And I'm just want to be like sharing what the current existing schools or organisations been doing to raise the campaigns that you guys had before, but they didn't know that it was like came from you guys, like, because they don't talk about the origin of those campaigns. They just talk about what went on as an action rather than the campaigners and the action or the activists behind the campaign. So I just thought I'd share that. And for me, because I'm myself is historian and heritage interested in a heritage industry and education as well. So maybe engaging in the next generation about the history and heritage of what's been achieved in Haringey is really important for the younger generation. so we know about the protest of the Black Lives Matters outside the police station in Bruce Grove recently, and also about the food prophecy campaign, or the COVID and all the mutual aids that's happening around mutual aid groups that pops up in the WhatsApp groups. And I just wondered whether that could be embraced a bit more amongst this group. Because I mean, the campaigning and the message and how they've been carried across is quite different, and how certain protests are being mobilized are quite different. Yeah, that's just my thought.
Thank you, Joanne. I think, Aldo, just a minute, because I think Tony raised the hand before than you. It's correct, Tony. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, it was replying to John's point. I think when you have a single issue campaign, you have a focus, and it's, I wouldn't say easy, but it's easier to keep a campaign going. I think one of the things with Haringey Solidarity Group, and when, you know, I know people in Islington, West London, down in Tower Hamlets have all tried to do the same thing as Haringey Solidarity Group. I think when you're quite broad and you're jumping from one issue to another, I think it can be difficult to keep it together really well, because there's not an obvious focus. Maybe, and it'd be interesting to hear what other people feel. And also, you know, Haringey Solidarity Group has been, over the years, has been producing its own stuff and running its own campaigns. But as Dave said, you know, we also supported a number of other things. So that's not, you know, and with the Vistian stuff, we did a huge amount. And I'm not even sure Vistian, they knew who we were individually, but they didn't really know who we were as HSG, because we didn't really push that we were HSG. And also, we've been setting up, you know, a lot of us have gone off on tangents and set up the film group, or our Tottenham, or some of us set up a housing co-op. So it's been quite a, I think it's quite a difficult thing to keep it all together. And I think sometimes people coming in find it difficult to focus on exactly what you're doing and what the point of it is and where you're going. So maybe we've not been brilliant at having that really good focus that brings new people in. Does that answer it? Does that partly answer it?
Okay, thank you, Tony. And now we have Alda.
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Joanna that I completely agree with you, Joanna. I think it's really important that actually the work of groups like the Haringey Solidarity Group is shared more widely. It's the heritage of Haringey, it's part of Haringey's heritage. And I think in a sense, this is a conversation which I've had already with the members in the past, and I will continue pushing towards that. And I think today, in a sense, you know, remembering the 30 years, looking back is also a way of looking forward. The website is in itself, the redesign of the website and reshaping it and trying to bring some more material in it is precisely going towards that kind of effort, looking at the way in which, you know, previous battles and previous efforts to make, you know, our places more equitable and more just needs to somehow carry our actions for the future. But as Tony said, I think it's also really important to start looking at how to diversify HSG in terms of age, how to bring young people in. And I think, you know, it's about communication, but it's also probably also trying to start thinking about what kind of actions the group want to take. And maybe some of the actions should look into issues that are faced specifically by young people and see how we can bring young people in the group and let them lead, in a sense. So I think heritage, absolutely, I'm with you. The website is a little step towards that, but also diversifying in terms of age. So how is this history and this heritage going to make young people feeling more powerful in making their demands for what is due to them? That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Alda. I don't know if John wants to answer or to say something else from Tony. Oh.
I think I don't think you can. I mean, Dave has talked about maybe HSG feeling like this isolated island in the middle of nowhere, but I think a lot of people have tried to do things, and some of them have been single issue things, and some of them have been solidarity groups. And I think the example of Haringey Solidarity Group existing for a long period of time and doing that kind of deep work in the community and being independent from, you know, the other traditional political structures, it has been a source of inspiration to a lot of people. And, you know, it is unfortunate that there aren't other people doing it better than you somewhere else. But at the moment, you know, this is what we've got, and we live in the world that we do, and people have given this stuff, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. And that's you know, that's the world we live in. I suppose that's what I was going to say. But you should feel proud. Everyone's very reserved on this call, and it's less jubilant than it should be.
Just sort of connected on that note, David mentioned the anti-ID cards campaign at the start, and no, not that Dave, the other David. and you know, when we started that, we started by fly posting and distributing loads of leaflets to publicise awareness of the ID card scheme, that was going to be compulsory ID cards for everyone. And we had an absolutely massive public meeting. Loads of people were interested. It got loads. We were doing regular pickets on the street, petitions. Loads of people supported it. And while individually, as a group, as HSG or as Haringey Against ID Cards, we didn't defeat it ourselves, we were part of you know, a bigger movement that did defeat it. So I just think that's like one of another examples of where, although we might seem like we're not achieving much, actually we're part of something bigger that is achieving something.
Thank you, Ellen. I think Dave Morris, they want to add something else in this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's relevant to what Helen said, but also Joanna about the Battle of Wood Green, which was, I think, 1977, when you know, it was a massive anti-fascist mobilization to try to prevent the National Front from marching through Haringey. We didn't really stop them marching, but it was a huge uproar. And then later on in the year, there was an even bigger successful trashing of a National Front march in Lewisham, which had national ramifications. And really, that was kind of the beginning of the end of the street mobilization of fascists. And whenever fascists show their face in Haringey, we and many other groups, you know, try to suppress that. Obviously, fascism has to be suppressed. You can't negotiate with fascism. But the point is that existed before, you know, that was 1977. There was a whole range of anti-fascist movements in the 70s. And in fact, in the 30s and in the 40s and 50s, you know. So we are part of a continuum. It's not that things started when we set up Haringey Solidarity Group. We came out of the anti-poll tax movement, but that came out of, you know, strong base that we already had through the Claimants Union in Tottenham. You know, was doing kind of similar things as the first kind of anti-poll tax efforts. And we used the Unwaged Centre as our base that was run by the Claimants Union. So, you know, it's a continuum. There was actually a libertarian anarchist group in the 80s in Haringey Community Action, you know, and the name was kept for the newspaper that came out by Haringey Solidarity Group. So you know, there is a continuum, and hopefully we're making it easier for people in the future to, you know, do what needs to be done. So yeah. And obviously the labour movement is a continuum, you know, the workers organising and strikes and disputes been going on for a century, and so on and so forth, and more than a century, 2 centuries, and so on. So we are part of a continuum. It's still all to play for, I can tell you. It's not over yet.
Thanks, Dave. And I think Marty wants to say something as well. I think he wants to give us some of his impressions, memories. Marty, do you hear? Do you hear me? Martin?
You're muted, Martin.
Martin, you're muted. If you want to say something, you have to...
Hang on.
There we go. Well done. Okay.
Oh, you know, so many people over the years have tried to mute me, but I always find the unmute button every New Year's Day, you know? Cast aside the whiskey and cigarettes and begin again. Just 2 very swift points. One, you know, everything about what, you know, the template that Alder put forward. Hello, Alder. And one concrete, I volunteer at the Hub Cafe, one of Dave's love childs, as well as his own human kid. And I think that could be a really good place to put the cinema, which was such a great success, although it tended to be the veteran generations, but it could be a place as well that we could use. It holds 50 or 60 there, and we could really turn it to the youth. You know, we could have sort of young people at the forefront of organising that with us, and build it in the schools and so forth. Amongst the black and white youth appalled by the police violence around the environmental, etc. And the second thing is Helen. Helen. I think that we have a moral obligation of the deepest order to place ourselves completely at the service of whatever support in any way related to this issue that Helen wants. And I think that there's been such a, I don't say, oh, that we failed, the left
the issue?
failed, but I think, well, you know her slightly, your loyalty to her is much more of a personal and lifelong bond than I have. But I think that I think no young women should join unless they see that we are championing the fight of women who have been horrifically abused. We've no right to ask any young woman radicalised today unless we champion the right of women to organise without police interference. That's my little minute, and I love you all with my mutilated heart.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you. All right. I don't know if Helen wants to say something.
I don't know if everybody understood what that was about, but basically, Helen, do you want to just say something about the Spy Cops inquiry and what's happened? Just so that people know what Martin's talking about.
Well, I was about to say something briefly, because actually, well, I've been at the Spy Cops, the Undercover Policing Public Inquiry, for the last 2.5 weeks. This is an inquiry into the secret political policing that has been going on in this country since 1968, with the police basically trying to undermine groups that were on the left and anarchist groups, and deceiving women into relationships while they were undercover. And I'm one of those women. Spying on family justice campaigns of the families of black people who've been killed by the police in custody, or where they've been victims of racist murders and their families have been campaigning for justice. Rather than the police kind of trying to catch the killers, they were spying on the family, the grieving families who were trying to get justice. So there's a public inquiry going on, which started a very long time ago, but the actual hearings only started, oh God, I've even lost track of time.
November.
I think it was in November last year. The first hearings were in November last year. The second lot of hearings have been going on for the last 2.5 weeks. The third lot of hearings were going to be later this year. They're now not going to be till next year. The lot of hearings about the 80s and 90s are now going off to 2023, and it's all going off into history. But it is actually a very interesting way of learning about the secret state. And just in relation to people talking about the Battle of Wood Green and the Battle of Lewisham, that's actually been discussed in the courtroom today. They were cross-examining the first police officer to give evidence about having a relationship. That was pretty hideous watching that. But he was infiltrating Walthamstow SWP in 1977 to 79, I think, possibly sometime around then. It might have been a year either side as well. And he actually was at Lewisham. But interestingly, he was admitting that the police should not have allowed the National Front to march through the area and inflame tensions, and that they were planning to violently harass the local community, and that's why the local community were angry, and that's why they fought back. It's as part of the inquiry, quite a lot of the police reports of the time come up on the screen if you're watching, and they are actually put up on the inquiry website at the end of the day, so you can get a picture of the sort of the information that they were passing on, which, as all of them have said so far, basically consisted of, they reported everything they saw and heard, and there's like individual reports on people of what they looked like, who they were having a relationship with, if they got married, it was reported, their bank details were recorded, just like pretty much everything. Anyway, there are some reports about the Battle of Lewisham, although they're very limited. Oh no, there's more of the Battle of Lewisham, because I was going to say, because there's 2 incidents where the police killed people on anti-racist protests in the 1970s. Blair Peach was killed in April 79 in Southall when the NF were trying to march there, and Kevin Gately was killed in Red Lion Square in a counter-protest against the NF then. I can't remember what year that was, Dave. Was that 77?
1974.
Anyway, 74, really? I thought it was later than that. Okay. Anyway, mysteriously, just about all the reports of those 2 events where protesters got killed have disappeared. But there's a lot of interesting information coming out, and I really recommend looking at the Campaign Against Police Surveillance website to learn more, and you'll see the links from there about how to see the documents that are up on the inquiry website and so on, and they do like a summary of the evidence that's been heard each day. So yeah, recommend looking at it.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, and very important to share this information. David, you want to add something else about this campaign, or no? Okay, perfect.
David King trying to speak, I think.
David King?
Oh, no.
Sorry. Shall we want to go to the second part of this this conversation? Or what more have been done and what needs to be done now and in the future in terms of starting from the heritage of Haringey Solidarity Group, what we achieved in the past, what we want to achieve now in the future, with all the campaigns we have, even where the Ellen say the campaign for the spy cops, for example, is very important. Whether how we can contribute to to fight back against the surveillance of the police, and how the police is in our life. Anyone want to start off with any point?
Yeah, can I say something, Luca?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, before I jump to the my lighting is not good. Before I jump to the future, I just want to go back to the past. I had a great time. I know Dave Morris can remember that time we had a 1 day of fundraising. Then we came with my partner. We was volunteer 1 day in the cafe. So we went there to cook meal, we sell meal, and we came up in a good amount of fundraising for the group. And then I can't remember if it was for this group or for the Lordship team. I can't remember, Dave Morris. But I had a great day. It was fun. And then if maybe in the future something that now the pandemic is easing, the lockdown, if we can have something like that, like just 1 day, people come together, they spend morning or afternoon, children, people with children, they can bring children. Again, it will be something nice. Thank you.
Can I just say, Luca, that we are planning an event on the 27th of June. Shall I say? On the 27th of June, Sunday, the 27th of June, we're planning a physical commemoration celebration event, more of a social event in Lord Shipwreck, in the hub, in the middle of Lord Shipwreck, between 3 and 7 in the afternoon. And the idea is to show films, which we've got a range of about 15 films, which will cut down, of activities in Haringey over the years that we've been involved with, occupations and protests and whatever. There'll be foods, stalls, it's a celebration event. Maybe we'll have gazebos outside as well. So Rebecca, if you want to get involved with doing some of the food for that event, just talk to us outside of the meeting. But the aim is to be a bigger event and more of a social face-to-face event.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
And Alex just joined, by the way. Hello, Alex.
Sorry, I'm late.
No, no worries. And sorry if I pick you. Do you want to bring some memories of your relationship with the Haringey Solidarity Group? Or I don't know, you want to say anything about the 3rd anniversary of Haringey Solidarity Group?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say I didn't realise, I didn't know about the Haringey Solidarity Group. I used to be in another group, London Solidarity, which in fact became defunct around the time that you started. So I'm very curious about it. Yeah, that's all.
Okay. You never came across with Haringey Solidarity Group in any publication? Or...
No, I used to go to the meetings in Wood Green at the Labour Club that Dave used to chair, I think, a lot of the time. But yeah. But
all right.
I think I would have been interested because the name Solidarity, but I don't know why. Just one of those, I never came across it for some reason. But...
Do you remember when was held this meeting in the Labour?
What period?
Yeah, what period? What date?
Well, I think it petered out, unfortunately. There was Liz Willis, who used to be in London Solidarity. I met up with her at a commemoration, and so I started going. And so it must have been from about 2009 onwards, that period, for the next few years. And then I don't think there were many meetings in recent years.
That's the Radical History Network. We organise monthly meetings for about 7 or 8 years, and there's still an email list which we publicise this meeting on. So
yeah, that's how I I'm sorry I'm late. I had a choice of, there was a talk on Kant at the Barnes Philosophy Group. So anyway, sorry I'm late. Anyway,
no worries, no worries. Thank you.
It's being recorded anyway. Can one access the recording afterwards? Do we?
Yes,
yes. We'll put it on the website.
We're going to share on our website, and then all the participants are in this meeting as well.
Great.
To give the recording. And my question actually is: we talk about the past, but obviously, in my introduction, I said we want also to talk about the future, because the idea is to build this bridge between past going towards the future in terms of the solidarity, radical activism, all the things are incorporated in Haringey Solidarity Group, because Haringey Solidarity Group is a group, has always been no hierarchical group, having some values, some principle about, you know, to be against any form of party, against any form of, you know, top from the top to the bottom. The idea always to be this, you know, to be equal in terms of how we conceive politics. And anyone else has any other point to add? What you think it will be useful to do in the future in terms of radical politics in the community, or the community? I don't know. Any ideas? Any thoughts? How we can use this heritage we have for something, you know?
I'm not.
Yes.
I'm not in Haringey anymore, so I can't. I can't volunteer for any of this. But I just wanted to also mention one of the really successful campaigns I think we had was the anti-advertising campaign, which was like a two-pronged attack on all the billboards that dominate our streets. Where like we're basically, everyone is told you need to buy this product to improve your life, and some people went and subvertised those boards and changed the message of those boards. And then we also did campaigns like where billboards didn't have planning permission, we campaigned to get them taken down, not feeling this constant pressure to buy stuff. But I think that actually, as HSG, we used to do quite a lot of fly posting and a lot of leafleting, and I think that both of those things are really important in order to spread ideas. I think that where like so much is done on social media now, you kind of can end up talking to people who you already agree with, and you're not really spreading the ideas beyond you know, people who already agree with you. Whereas if you do stuff like leafleting and posters and billboards, then you are communicating with people who haven't necessarily come across your ideas before. So I just think that that's like a really important part of strategy from the past to take into the future as well.
Well, yeah, thank you, Alan.
Sorry, I'm just noticing a message in the...
Yeah, Martin, say something for...
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Spike Ops is, right, it is outrageous what they've done, but I would really caution against advising people not to get involved because of the existence of Spike Ops, because that's exactly what they want. They want to create fear in our movements and deter people from taking part in the struggle for a better world. So I think, yeah, it's important to look out for each other and offer solidarity when people are going through shit because of what the state have done or for whatever reason, but I don't think we should let fear kind of put us off wanting to create a better world, because actually if we don't try and create a better world, things are going to get a lot worse. So I don't know, it's pretty crucial.
Okay, anyone else want to?
Yeah, could I just chip in? My dinner's ready, so I'm going to have to go. But I just wanted to say it's great. You know, this is great as an opportunity to reflect on, you know, everything that HSG has done. And, you know, my own personal reflection is that I've been more involved in the single issue stuff than the centre. And I think that is, you know, it's a difficult sort of like balance to achieve. I think, you know, but also to, you know, just support what Helen said, is it's like, I mean, it's been a weird year, hasn't it? Do you know what I mean? Being sort of like isolated, and I think sort of like, you know, all my best memories of sort of like the campaigns that I've been involved in have been the street stalls, you know, and actually sort of like, you know, talking to people who aren't in these networks, and you know, and that, I think, you know, obviously a lot has changed in society over the past like 30 years, but over the past 10, 15 years, obviously, like the way that we communicate. And I can remember when, how I used to find out about HSG was through the mail out. Do you know what I mean? Was like getting something through the post and the leaflets and stuff like that. And now obviously everything has changed. And so, you know, I think that's part of my reflection, is like whether HSG has kept up with those changes. And I know the website's been done, but like, you know, people would be talking about like engaging with like young people. Young people don't read emails, they wouldn't read leaflets. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, Instagram and Twitter and things like that, I think are really important if we want to like reach out to, certainly to a younger age group. But like I say, I've got to go, but I'm really looking forward to like the face-to-face stuff, and hopefully I'll see you all there.
We're starting doing stalls again, by the way. So stay linked in.
Yeah, will do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually, the idea, yes, to have again some stall, and also the idea is other groups or other situation in our borough, or you know, to come with leaflets or any political material, and then you know, the idea also to have a join you know, activity with other people. It's not just SSG itself, but the idea also to extend to others, basically.
Luca, Isla wants to speak.
Yeah.
Yes, Isla.
I feel like it's true that HSG has had a diversity problem in terms of both women from when I was there. When I was in HSG, it was largely older white men. And I don't know what it's like now, but I imagine it's the same-ish. But I feel like you're just going around the same questions constantly, and the answers, or you always turn, or when I was there, you always turn to the young people in the group to resolve the issues, or the women within the group to resolve the issues. It needs to be a collective effort, and I feel like you're just going around the same questions over and over again. I don't know. I don't have a solution. I'm not there anymore as well.
Good point.
Not very helpful, I know.
Really good point.
Have you got any ideas about how to address that?
No. That's what I tried when I was in HSG. We had various meetings, I think, and we never really came to a conclusion. I don't know. I'm not very helpful.
That I know of. And I think sometimes just acknowledging that this could be an issue, and, you know, making space for there to be a solution to these issues and be accommodating to new people that come along might be, you know, at least a step in the direction, and certainly better than some other groups. I think people have talked about the lockdown. I think it has been a weird year. And I think when we look at our lives, probably we'll be able to divide them into kind of post-lockdown and pre-lockdown. And part of that's because the year itself, or more than a year, was pretty horrible. And part of it is because a lot of people aren't here anymore. And part of it's because people are going to have gone through this lockdown and be reflecting on their lives and the kind of lives they want to lead, and the importance of community, and a kind of hunger to kind of get out there and do things again. And I think at the same time that that's happening, there's also going to be a huge restructuring of how London works and what businesses are doing and what politicians are doing. So there's going to be you don't need to sit here and think about the kind of struggles that you need to get involved with, you know, over the next 10 years, because I think they're going to come and slap everybody in the face, frankly. And one of the solutions to those is having a kind of stable community-based organization that's maybe not poised like a kind of, you know, coiled serpent or something, but is certainly able to do some things and bring people together and do all that sort of stuff. And people are looking forward to going to the pub and getting out there and seeing their families, and maybe on the way to the pub or seeing their families, they might bump into a kind of HSG stall or something, or see a poster or whatever. So there are lots of opportunities there. And there's always a temptation to beat yourselves up because you've not seized every single opportunity that there is. But I would, you know, I hope that collectively the people that are here dotted around the country and, you know, people that live in Haringey can kind of seize those chances.
Good reflection.
We are starting stalls in a couple of weeks. I can't remember the actual date, but anyone that's on the list will no doubt get a notification. We're just going to see how it goes initially, how many people we get. But obviously in the past we've done them really regularly and talk to anybody that comes up to the stall and hand out, you know, key leaflets that are relevant to the moment. So I think that people want to start that again. And
any other business to add this conversation? It's 9 o'clock roughly. Otherwise, we can conclude this conversation, and then hopefully all of you coming on the 27th of June, the Lordship Rec in the hub, to toast, to raise a glass, finally see each other physically and not anymore in this Zoom. I know a lot of people didn't want to participate. I invited people who were involved in the last 10 years in Haringey Solidarity Group, I know personally. And the reason why I didn't want to attend is a Zoom, because they feel really uncomfortable to speak on Zoom. I know it's tough, it's difficult, it's a very strange, it's very weird. And I can imagine for most of the people, it's not the best comfortable tool to, you know, to engage with other people. But we try to celebrate on the day of the 11th of May, just to give this a celebration, a taste of celebration, and then to carry on the celebration with on the 27th of June, where we can enjoy the 30th anniversary more in depth. There was also an opportunity to see people I never met before, actually. That's important for me. And for example, I'm very happy to see Jane, Ayala. We made many meetings together in SG, and you know, it's important to see again Ellen as well. And then hopefully we see in the stall or in the other events we're going to have soon. And then the idea always to have this network with the radical history is important. I follow quite a lot radical history, and then, you know, other activities we can have in Haringey, or even in Haringey. Rebecca, me, and Dave Rains, we are running this food COP now in Tottenham. We're doing this, you know, this idea to have a different concept about the food, and to, you know, to create this community, food community in Tottenham, you know. And actually we were inspired by Haringey Solidarity Group, basically, I think, because, you know, it's the Haringey Solidarity Group for me was a point of reference to some ways. If not anybody wants to add anything, I think we can conclude the meeting, and we'll see you on the 27th of June. We still have a monthly meeting for every month. If you want to join the meeting will be always available for people who want to join. Okay, thank you very much for everybody, and see you soon. Bye.
See you all.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye, and thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So Dave, have you secured the recording?
Yeah, I've got it recorded. Yeah.
And the chat, do you want me to save the chat and email it to you?
You can, or I can save that as well.
If you want to save it, I'll do it as well. I'll do it as well,
just in case.
Just in case, yeah.
Yeah.
Well done. I think it went really well.
What happened?
What happened? Oh, you missed it all. Did Leicester win or what?
They did.
Well, would you
I was
believe it? Okay. So you're pleased now anyway.
I was pleased, yeah. That's why I was smiling all the way through.
Okay. All right then. You're right, Tony. You're a bit. Was that a good meeting?
Yeah, it was. I was open a lot more. I didn't want to. I wanted other people to speak, and I was open
a bit.
So yeah, that's